One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a question for you out of left field that you are not even remotely thinking about right now because it seems like so long ago that this happened. But I want to ask you a question of what did COVID do for you? I asked that question to a lot of people, and some people are excited on what it's changed. I know for myself, I got introduced to this weird thing called Zoom, and it worked out really well because I'd never heard of it prior to COVID. And but to other people, it was not necessarily a good journey. And so, if you are looking for a great success story, then strap yourself in because I'm honored to be hanging out with Ben Albert. How are you today, my friend?
Excited to be here. I got to pinch myself that it's been 5 years, but that journey from COVID to now has been a strange trip. I've loved
Yeah.
it, but hey,
Well, you didn't always love it because I want to and I did some research and talked to you a little bit about it. It's like, oh my gosh, we got to get this story out to our world. So, first of all, you're the founder and CEO of B. Albert Marketing, and also you're the founder of Real Business Connections and then Grow Getters Only. So there's a ton there. We'll unpack these today as we go. But I want to just kind of jump right in off the deep end here. Tell me what happened for you right around COVID, because I know you have a really crazy story that we'd love to listen and learn about.
yeah, didn't get hit by a car, didn't go
Well, that's
skydiving and
good.
lose a leg,
Got
but
all your
I've
limbs, right?
all my limbs. But
There
I've
you go.
noticed, and I joke because I don't know if to me the story is not crazy, but we all have a unique story and we all get
Yeah.
questioned at times. We get tested at times. And I, prior to COVID, was literally living the dream from Rochester, New York. I'm working in the office that's in most photos of my city. Big, beautiful Chase Tower building. I'm on like the 15th floor. I was never a suit and tie guy, but it was required of me. So I'm wearing
Sure.
a suit and tie to work every day, and I've made it. I'm
Yeah.
crushing it. Behind the scenes, my I was messed up, man. Like I was having problems behind the scenes. I was drinking too much. I was having trouble maintaining quality relationships. I was losing friends, wasn't always there for my family. Like I was struggling behind the scenes, but on paper, I had
Yeah.
made it. Then COVID hit and I got let go.
Wow.
So I had just transferred 5 months prior, I had just transferred over from another company. So last one in, first one out. It's
Sure.
reasonable that when you're a sales executive that I don't know, not much sales is happening right now. We don't even know what we're going to do. So I
Sure.
got let go, and some of those negative things, especially the drinking, was coming to the surface. Because I mean, COVID was a shared trauma. No one gave us a handbook on what to do or how to
Right.
manage a worldwide pandemic. And the way I managed was just drinking whiskey. So
Wow.
I remember one specific moment, and if I'm honest with myself, it wasn't one moment, it was like 1,000 moments. But I'm laying there and I'm looking at this empty bottle of Jim Beam whiskey and I'm like, what am I doing? And every
Yeah.
morning, like I have optimized my habits. I am the habit king. Every morning I meditate and I visualize and I write and I drink a bunch of water and I exercise and I do affirmations. And every morning I do these affirmations, but I had just stared at a bottle of whiskey. I get up, my
Yeah.
eyes are bloodshot, one eye's twitching a little bit, probably too much stress and caffeine. And when you're saying these affirmations in a mirror, like you're good enough now and you're only getting better, you're an open channel for creative ideas, you act as if you already have what you want. Listen to
Yeah.
that one. You act as if you already have what you want, but all the evidence in front of you says that you don't
Right.
act as if.
Right.
You
Wow.
start to not believe yourself.
Sure.
And it just made me depressed, man. Like that was
Yeah.
that 6 months, and I had struggled with drinking and different porn and things like that in the past. But that 6 months when COVID first hit and I let go was a really, I wouldn't call it rock bottom because I still had a roof over my head, but sure wasn't pretty, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I think you have these three words that you put together that I think are really important, and it's behind the scene. And I think what's interesting, I don't know about you, Ben, but I see a lot of people that are trying to make this life look a certain way. Catch the sun at a certain angle, catch my, glistening on my latest and greatest whatever I bought, my arms around my family that love me and all this stuff. And I totally get that piece. It feels like there are times, though, as entrepreneurs where we don't really look behind the scenes. So, my first question to you is like, were you a behind the scenes looker to begin with, or did this kind of trauma force you to do that? I mean, were you aware of that early on in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, so it's going into the life history, but at
Yeah.
a very young age, my dad loved drinking and he loved marijuana. Before I even knew he was doing this, him and I would watch Denver Bronco games, and he would take a remarkable amount of breaks, like a unrealistic about every like 10
What do you have, a
minutes.
small bladder and you had to go to the bathroom all the time, or
I,
what?
I pee, go downstairs to have a smoke.
Yeah.
Possibly he's doing a shot down there, drink
Yeah.
some water. Like
Sure.
if you're smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol, it's actually very difficult to sit still unless
Yeah.
you're just like melted and can't move or hungover and just so like but I would notice these observations and I'd come home and once in a while you could tell he was just like not in a good mood
Mm,
and I found ways to tiptoe and hide. And then when he was in a good mood, I found that's when I brought up problems. But I
sure.
had this like awareness that I don't think everyone has at a very young age.
Sure.
So I started to notice my own issues early on.
Okay.
Noticing a problem and fixing it are two different conversations. But
Right.
you can't fix a problem you've never identified. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers your question, but I was
Yeah.
aware. I was optimized to heck. Like, again, great morning routine. I even launched a podcast in like 2015 called
Mm,
Immediate Actionable Steps. And
okay.
I wanted to like have this positive self development show at a very young age, but I never
Yeah.
went through with it because I felt like so out of alignment. Who's Ben to tell anyone what to do? Who am I to tell Dave or Mark or
Sure.
Joe
Yeah.
or John what to do when I can't even put my own pants on right?
Right. Wow. Well, and I think it's interesting. We do a lot of work with emotional intelligence, and one of the primary foundations is being self-aware. So, interestingly enough, like the research is crazy. Like 90% of people that are interviewed for this particular study thought that they were self-aware. Comes to find out that really only about 15% of people actually
Wow.
are self-aware. So there's this huge blind spot where we think we're self-aware, where we're really not. And I think it's interesting because I know a lot of entrepreneurs around the world that are listening right now. They kind of just go through the motions. They're not really interested in understanding their childhood, or they're not really interested in looking behind the scene, like you said. And it's easy to criticize others rather than yourself. So, where did you kind of get that piece? I mean, I know, like you said early on, you were self aware. But sometimes being self-aware is not enough. Like you said, you need to actually know what to do when you're in that spot. So did you kind of, so we're in 2020, you get let
Mm.
go from your job, and now it's like, crap, what's the next step? I mean, did you were working in corporate America, so to speak, during that time? Was there like a thought in your mind, hey, I want to go back into corporate? Or is that what birthed all these businesses that you started? I mean, where did those kind of come from for you?
Yeah, I think I really got lucky. And I'm a firm believer that all the skills and whether it's a good memory or bad memory, all the stuff we go through, the skills we develop, the experiences we have are preparing us for who we're becoming. And you kind of touched on this like I think that you can be and become simultaneously. I think that we already have most of the answers. We
Okay.
really don't need much more information. A lot of it's implementation. In my case, I knew what was good, I knew what was bad. I was doing a lot of the bad and not enough of the good. I put them in two categories, better or bitter.
Hmm.
Be- does it make you better or make you bitter? I knew
Yeah.
what was in each category. I was just doing a ton of the bitter stuff and not the
Sure.
better stuff.
Yeah.
So I became an accidental entrepreneur because I really already had the skills. We don't have to go into the whole life story, but I was a music promoter. I was making MySpace pages and Facebook pages and websites, handing out
Hmm.
flyers,
Mm.
started a music podcast. So I
Sure.
actually relaunched the music podcast well before I did the business one. And it was on a hiatus. I relaunched the music podcast during the pandemic. Then I
Okay.
launched a business podcast. But when you look at my background, I was a marketing guy in sales who had been podcasting in 2016 in the music industry. And I don't know where this came from, but I've always just been curious and annoying. Like I want to learn something new. So I
Okay.
started a business podcast to learn from business leaders
Sure.
because, and I called it Rochester. It's now called Real Business Connections, but I called it Rochester, New York, Rochester Business Connections because I needed some. I didn't know what was next. I didn't have a client.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an entrepreneur, possibly, but
Yeah.
I had set up my LinkedIn page. I had updated my bio. I was applying for jobs and nothing was sticking. So I
Sure.
was even thinking, like, your network's your network is your net worth. If I
Yeah.
start a business podcast and network with business owners, maybe I can get a job.
Sure.
I didn't necessarily think it would be a business that's been in business for 5 years yet. I was just figuring it out as I went.
Yeah.
And it worked out for me. But I want to hammer it in because I'm all over the place. But the simple point is I had learned podcasting, I had
Yeah.
learned marketing, I had learned communication skills, I had a degree in communication. And all these skills prepared me for this traumatic situation where I could
Sure.
apply them. And Music Ben was a drunk, was a party animal, was a great guy, but was making bad decisions.
Sure.
Business Ben's an entrepreneur. So all I did is take who I already was and
Yeah.
step into a new version of myself. And I mean, if you look back, like I feel like I've grown quite a bit in the past 3 to 5 years,
Okay.
but I didn't need anything new. I just needed to use the tools at my disposal. And then I
Sure.
started to level up as I went.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, and I think you bring up a good point. So we talk about this, we try to talk about this every week because there's a lot of people listening, Ben, right now that are like envious of what you're saying because they're in corporate America and they don't know how to transition into owning their own business for whatever reason. And I think your figure out as you go, it really it gives some people listening some freedom because a lot of times I talk to people and they feel like they got to have their 27 steps all figured out prior to launch. And I'm not here, we always put the caveat in there's no right or wrong way to
Right.
transition from corporate America to starting your own business. Some people fly solo and jump out the one day. Some people, ride in tandem and they are in corporate America while they're starting their business. There's no right or wrong way to it. So for the listener, please, make sure that you're grasping that we're not here to say the right or wrong. But in this case for Ben, how cool is that to be able to say freely that I had to figure this out as I went? And so I want to try to give people listening that, get out of jail free card, that freedom to be able to experience that. Was that hard for you to have that mentality or is that easy for you? Because there's a lot of people listening that are like, crap, if I don't have all those steps laid out, I'm not doing this. So was that tough for you?
Well, in ways, it's sink or swim. In other ways, I live in America and had $10,000 in my savings, which isn't much, but I had something. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people are like, I was sleeping on the side of the road with not a penny to my name. It's like I
right.
had 10K to my name, so I had
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And I'm just being honest with people. Like there were stimulus checks going out. So I had
Sure.
unemployment and stimulus checks. I'm not confident that I would have just been like, I don't like my job today. let's just go out and like some people make decisions
Right.
so quick, and I'm like, you're just
Yep.
gonna quit your job because you had a bad day. It's like, yep, I
Yeah.
felt like it. Like I was forced into it, so I got
Sure.
to figure it out. I
Yeah.
wonder if I wasn't forced,
Yeah.
if I would have done it, but
Yeah.
I got to figure it out. And in my case, it was a little bit of savings, stimulus check, a partner that had her stuff together. But usually, when we're positive, our mindset's in the right place, and we're willing to figure it out and try,
Yeah.
the universe gives us little gifts. For me, it's maybe a stimulus check, but it was a
Yeah.
new mentor. And it was just time, man. The
Sure.
biggest thing was time because it's kind of crazy, but I replaced my income in a year.
Mm,
But it took a year is one thing, and I'm not saying
sure.
that's normal results. It took my
Sure.
whole life to get to the place where I could even do that.
Right. Wow. Well, and that's really sage advice. So again, think about it for if you're listening and you are contemplating an idea, again, if you want to figure it out as you go, we just gave you permission. If you want to have everything 100% nailed down before you start, that's fine too. I remember I had somebody on the show, Ben, and the guy said 6 days into, he got married, 6 days later, he quit his job.
Wow.
Um, didn't to give anybody warning, just walked in, quit, came home, told his wife, "Hey, honey, I quit my job and I'm going to start a business." I mean, so again, those are the two extremes. Neither one's right or wrong. I wouldn't necessarily advise on quitting your job, especially if you got kids and dogs and
Mhm.
houses and blah, blah, blah. You want to make sure that this is going to work. And so we try to at least encourage everybody listening to do it their own way. And I love the fact that we're talking about figure it out as you go. Um, but for you, I'm just curious, did you have, were people around you, family, friends, were they like, dude, you're crazy, or did you have pretty good support? I know you mentioned you had a companion that was pretty supportive, but outside of that, did you experience resistance? Because I'm guessing right now people are listening, going, man, my brother this, or my neighbor, my friend, whatever, are really busting my chops on this. So how was that experience for you?
I'm lucky. My family's got a big heart. I mean,
Mm.
my grandma's like, "So what do you do? Are you looking for a job?" Still to this day, like I'll post some rambling reel of stuff that I don't know. I started a podcast during the pandemic, started connecting with business owners. They became my mentor, like a 30-second reel, and I get
Yeah,
this DM, "So how do you make money?" question mark. People didn't understand
yeah,
always,
yeah,
um, but I didn't get a lot of hate, which I think is
good.
beneficial. I think there was a lot of apathy that people were wondering what the heck was going on in the world.
Sure.
So everyone had their own stuff in front of them that I don't think they were that worried about mine. In my
Yeah,
case, I think my family was just happy to see me doing something different than staring at a wall waiting for the
yeah,
paint to dry.
right.
But I have the awareness that everybody's situation's different. Um, my girlfriend, honestly, I need to like give her a hard time because she hasn't been as I'm saying this with love. She hasn't been as supportive because she's such a high achiever and I'm such a high achiever that I think we just get used to it and we forget
Yeah,
how badass we are. But when I just got started, like
yeah,
she was my biggest cheerleader, and at that time I was nothing. I was just a pebble. I was just a
yeah,
minnow in an ocean of podcasters and marketers,
sure.
an
Yeah,
ocean of sameness, but she was my greatest advocate. And I think she's just gotten used to how badass I am by now. But she was my greatest advocate. And if you just have one person that makes you feel like you're not crazy, that's a
yeah,
sign. And maybe you are crazy, but all the greatest, all the greatest things I think are invented and created by someone who might be a little bit crazy in one way or another.
sure. Well, and everybody's crazy is a little different, right, Ben?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
it's not good or bad, right or wrong. And I think that's what's so interesting about being an entrepreneur is there are so many people that want give me a checklist, give me a bullet point list, send me a PowerPoint. They want some type of formula to be able to be successful at it. And you talk to as many people, there's as many formulas. Some people think, you got to work 24/7. We were talking about it before. Is it a 3-day work week? Is it a 7-day? Before we jumped on, there's no right or wrong way. And I think for certain people, we do a ton of work with DISC, the personality profile.
Mm.
So you can look at how a human being is built and created. And it's like there are certain people that if it's not laid out crystal clear, I'm not doing it. So again, if you're listening now and your brain is telling you, I need it to be crystal clear, follow that. Don't buck that. I mean, you can jump outside your comfort zone a little bit, but I don't recommend quitting your job and going home and telling your honey and your kids, hey, guess what? I quit my job. I have no clue what I'm going to do, but hey, I feel really good. you know? So I'm just curious. I mean, are you more of a structured type person, or are you more a fly by the seat of your pants type person?
I'm definitely more structured, but I'm also highly creative,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So we
Yeah.
talked about morning routines. Still to
Yep.
this day, for over 10 years, I've done savers. I don't know if you know Hal Elrod's Savers, the Miracle
Mm-mm.
Morning, but
No.
very simply put, silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing.
Oh, okay.
I have done that morning routine for 10 years. I like
Gotcha.
structure. I like, in this scenario, same mic for years now. Same mic,
Yep.
same camera, same TV. You put me in like high octane, crazy environments, like a super busy networking event with a lot of clanking and music. I get
Yeah.
really introverted and shy. I do
Gotcha.
good when I have control of some of the controllables. So I'm
Sure.
very much into routine, but I'm simultaneously creative as hell. It's like, let's
Wow.
create a template, a canvas,
Sure.
and let's start breaking rules. But I like to understand the rules before I break them. I
Wow.
learn the playbook before I audible. Some people
Okay.
audible before they're annoying to
Yep.
work with for what it's worth. They audible before they ever learn the play. Other
That's me.
people will learn the play
Yep.
and they'll never learn how to add their own self to it, their
Sure.
own
Yep.
disc, their own DNA code.
Right.
I try my best to have best of both worlds, but I'm
Wow.
definitely more on the structured side of things.
That's cool. But we're going to take a break here. I just want to get one thing in. So, when you have ready, aim, fire, that's the normal world, the way they do it. For us, non-structured people, I'm fire. If I got time, I'll get ready. If I got even more time, I'll aim. Well, the problem is, there's good and bads to all of these. And sometimes the bullet doesn't go where you want it to go because you didn't take the time to aim and you sure didn't take the time to get ready. So, whether it's your way where you're more structured or my way where we're less structured, they both have advantages and disadvantages. And I just want to encourage the listener to get
Mm.
that self awareness in yourself and find out which way you are. Because, like Ben said, once you're able to do that, you can then find your cadence. It's a whole lot easier to do it that way. Than wonder if you're like doing it the right way, right? Because if I can't get out of bed and meditate for whatever reason, don't I see a lot of people like they beat themselves up on that.
Sure,
And
I
it's like,
used to.
just relax. Maybe you meditate at the end of the day. Maybe you don't need to meditate, whatever it is. But it's like, there some people they lay out these formulas, and if you don't do it this way, there's no way that you're going to be successful. So I'm just curious, so you're more on that side. Do you know people that are less structured than you, and do you guys still get along okay? And do
Oh,
your
totally.
clients, do you have a lot of clients that are structured or non-structured?
Wow, that's a big, I mean, literally with what you just said with the firing first, that immediately resonated with me. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking the first thing that came to mind was I hope I have enough bullets. But if you
Yeah.
fire first, you can at least see where the bullet went first.
Yep.
It's hard to re-aim if you don't even you spend all your time aiming and then you shoot it
Right.
all into La La Land. Maybe you take a quick shot and then aim afterwards.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, a lot. Yeah, it's well, I'm in an art studio right now, so I rent a
Okay.
room in an art studio. So
Cool.
I'm completely surrounded by people that are creative, out of the box thinkers.
Great.
Like I can walk out into the hallway and it's just beautiful art. So I'm in a perfect
Nice.
place.
That's
And
cool.
I think just no matter how you are, having the balance in your life is really fulfilling.
Sure. Cool. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get tactical now, Ben, because you got a bunch of great ideas and thought processes about thought leaders, and you talked about marketing. So I want to kind of unpack some of those things. So we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Ben Albert, the founder of B. Albert Marketing and the founder of Real Business Connections and Grow Getters Only. So, you now that you are established in this world of marketing, that's where you were pre-COVID, and then you kind of stayed in that world post-COVID, then, correct?
Yeah, learned a lot that business isn't just marketing and selling things, but that's a different point.
Right?
Oper it's marketing's only a piece of the puzzle.
Sure. Well, so I want to start. So you have four or five, how many, four or five podcasts going right now?
Fine now, I mean, technically it's one podcast. I'll be honest
Okay.
with you, Dave. But we
Okay.
have, I think, 8 different segments now.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So how in the world does podcasting, how do you leverage that for the person listening? How do you leverage that to build your influence? Because I know a lot of people want to be, an influencer in their company, in their industry, in their nation, whatever. How did you use podcasting to leverage that for yourself?
Yeah, a lot of people want a seat at the table. A lot of people want an opportunity on the mic. They want to be a superstar. They want to get platformed. The easiest way to get a seat at the table is to bring your own table and ask others to be a part of it. If you want an
Gotcha.
opportunity on the mic, you bring your own mic. If you want
Sure.
to be platformed, you create a platform. So podcasting to me is like the greatest case study because it's so clear, but just inventing anything that's true to you, whether it's a live event, a book, a blog, a
Sure.
Substack, a podcast, that's great because you want to become the center of gravity and attract people into your world. Now, a podcast is a great way to do that because for me, I wanted to learn business ownership. So I had a great opportunity to meet business owners. Now, the
Hmm.
pandemic was the perfect storm with Zoom and all that because
Yeah.
they could show up in their pajama pants from their home.
Yep.
And I wanted to do business, but I didn't know how to. So I
Right.
started a business ownership podcast. It was called Rochester Business Connections because
Yeah.
I needed some. And just in the fact that it's Ben Albert with Rochester Business Connections, people thought I was very well connected and very good at business. The answer was I was not good at either of those. I started the podcast to be aspirational.
Sure.
When we talk about creating something that didn't exist and bringing your unique self to it to attract others, a podcast was a great way to meet mentors, meet other business owners, which were now peers and
Yeah.
possible clients, and build a personal brand. So whether it's Rochester Business Connections or wild water fly fishing or faith faith simplified, whatever is key to you, what you
Sure.
believe in, what you value, there's mentors out there with similar values, there's peers out there with similar values, and there's an audience for you. So I just started a podcast and
Yeah.
ended up being like a thought leader on thought leaders because Ben
Hmm.
was always the dumbest in the room. But you're doing a great job. You're a fantastic host. Just coming, asking insightful questions, and platforming these brilliant
Sure.
people
Yeah.
led to credibility, led to momentum, led to friendship, led to money. And it
Sure.
didn't happen overnight, but my whole brand was built on one conversation at a time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and I think there for the listener, there's really because I know a lot of people reach out to us and they're like so intimidated to start their podcast. They want to do it, but they don't know how, blah, blah, blah. I always tell people, why don't you just Google podcasts of topics that you'd be considered a thought leader on
Mm.
whether it's within your industry, maybe it's a hobby, a personal desire interest that you have, like you talked about music early on, And that kind of seemed to follow through your journey with you. So I just want the people listening to know that if you struggle thinking there's no way I could do a podcast or start one, maybe the first step is being on other people's podcasts, where again, if you're a history buff or you love to talk about whatever, there's a podcast for whatever topic you want to talk about. And so I think that, those are two options of either jumping in and doing your own show or, being a guest on other people's. You do both. And I'm just curious, do you have a preference? Just a pure personal question. Would you rather be the host or would you rather be the guest?
By a landslide, I'd rather be the host.
Okay.
By by a landslide, it's way less work when you're the guest.
Right? Yep. Like for today, you'd show up and I'm asking the questions and we do all the producing and everything on the back end and magic. Dana crushes it when it comes to creating a great show. But
Mm.
excuse me, that might answer somebody's question listening right now, Ben, because they might not have access to the time, the expertise. They might not want to produce the show. Well, no worries. Let someone else produce the show. Just be their expert.
Yeah.
Which you talked about being a thought leader, and how can somebody position themselves in that? Because I think thought leaders are kind of, it's a wishy-washy term because anybody can really become a thought leader. And you don't have to have a creative thought no one's ever thought of in order to be a thought leader. So when you think of thought leaders, what is that, like for somebody listening, how could they position themselves as a thought leader?
Yeah, and I joke that I'm a thought leader on thought leaders because
Yeah,
I'm good at finding them, but I'm not going to raise my hand and say that I'm the greatest thought leader in the world. I don't think most people are thought leaders. They want to be influential, they want to be thought leaders, but there's two main components. Let's break it down. We'll break it down and hopefully not upset too many people, but it's just the reality.
sure.
Thought leadership. So you have to have good thoughts. You can't be a thought leader if you don't have great thoughts, groundbreaking ideas, access
Yeah,
to insider information, always developing and learning. You can become a thought leader just if you're obsessed with the learning process on one topic.
sure.
The other key component is leadership. You need to not just have good thoughts, you need to be really good at communicating them or
Right.
leading others in some sense. There's a lot of people with great thoughts. It's so crazy when I think about this. There's people with great thoughts, but they don't know how to communicate or persuade or market or present them to a greater audience or a team.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then there's a ton of people who are fantastic leaders with terrible thoughts.
Right.
Those are my favorite because they're
Yeah.
very confident, but the thoughts aren't the best. But when you break those two categories down, you want to get obsessed and really just dedicate your life to learning about something that you just genuinely love. Are you going to
Sure.
be an expert on fishing? Are you going to be an expert on marketing, an expert podcaster? For me,
Sure.
like I just like studying the human mind and seeing how different business professionals like tick and what makes them successful. Um, you dedicate your life for a great amount of time to learning something, but then you also have to be really good at communicating that message
Yeah.
because you're never going to have critical mass if you're talking over people. And you can still have 1,000 fans if you're highly technical, you do technical and you have an audience for that. But the biggest thought leaders oftentimes have to even dumb down their communication so they can get more critical mass. So those are the two main components. Have good thoughts. What can you obsess over? But then learn how to market or communicate or persuade or ultimately just get masses, get teams on board. And that's what creates thought leadership. And it's actually kind of difficult, but it's a great aspiration to master both of those categories.
Sure. Wow, that's great. Well, and you kept using the word communication, and I think that's so powerful. We do a ton of training on communication, and at the end of the day, the research shows that 85% of everybody's success today listening is not about their drive. It's not about their education. It's not even about their passion. It's about how well you can communicate a message.
Wow.
And that's where I think, like you just said, you can have the greatest message, but if you can't communicate it effectively, I liken it to different languages. I think that how long would we have had success in this podcast if you and I did not speak the same language? It would be absolutely the shortest podcast ever that never got published because we couldn't even communicate. We couldn't even launch together outside of a name and maybe a company name. And then all of a sudden, my first question or your first answer, I don't get or you don't get, that's pretty much over. So I think communication is more than just communication 101 that we took in college. This has to be about understanding the person you're communicating with and understand their language, so to speak. And I
Mm.
think that that's especially as a thought leader, because you kind of have to get into their mind a little bit, right? And you kind of have to peel away a little bit to really get them to start thinking. And let's face it, not everybody is going to be a thought leader. Not everybody needs to be a thought leader. I'm sure there's plenty of successful people that aren't, leading every day with, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. What a brilliant thought, or putting 10 words together that have never been put together before that create this thought that's like, wow, I never even thought of that before, you know? So I
Can
appreciate
I
that.
jump on this real
Yeah,
quick?
absolutely. Yeah,
My favorite TED Talk of all time, I think it's 15 years old. It's Derek Sivers' How to Start a Movement. If you Google that, it'll come up. I don't know the exact title.
sure.
It's 4 minutes long, so it's really quick. I'll give you the 30-second version. There's
Yeah.
some sort of like high school event, band playing. There's a crazy dancing guy, shirtless, dancing around like a maniac, crazy dancing guy,
Yep.
looks like a lone lunatic. Then one person joins him. Now the lone lunatic has a partner. He embraces number two. They high five. Now we have two crazy dancing guys.
Yep.
Before you know it, a third one comes in. Three's a crowd. And in the course of like 2 minutes, there's a stampede like the Lion King running because everyone wants in on whatever the heck's going on. So one crazy dancing guy
Yeah.
created an entire stampede of people running to the front. That's why it's
Sure.
such a great TED Talk because they visualize, he walks you through it. People are gonna give the crazy dancing guy number one a ton of credit,
Yep.
but who would he have been without the second person that came in and embraced him?
Right.
Who would he have been without the third person? So the crazy dancing guy might get all the credit, but it
Right.
was possibly the second guy that made it possible. So
Sure.
maybe the crazy dancing guy is your thought leader.
Yep.
The second guy's your implementer, a
Yeah.
supporter, someone who has a tool. The third person's your first early adopter. And then everyone comes on board. You don't always have to be the crazy dancing guy. But if you're
Yep.
the first adopter or the second adopter, that's what makes it all possible. So thought leadership, I think, is overrated. Supporting a good idea is just as important than coming up with it.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. And I think there's probably a ton of people listening that just breathe a sigh of relief because they don't want to be the crazy guy with their shirt off in front of everybody, unless there's alcohol involved, right? But generally speaking, they don't want to be the first one there. And sometimes we get to be the first one there, and it's like, crap, what am I doing here? This is not for me. So I would be less tied into, am I a thought leader? And more, am I effectively communicating my message? Am I seeing change in other people? Am I seeing change in myself? Because again, I see communication all the time that makes no sense. And it's like, well, it's either over my head. I mean, my kid's a calculus major, and he can prove to me 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. Well, I tell you what, Ben, he laid out this long mathematical thing, and I was lost from the start. Well, in his mind, he's following right along with it, thought leader, thinking, great, I can prove 1 + 1 isn't 2.
Sure.
Somehow he did it. I have no clue how, it doesn't matter. But I just want people listening to realize that you don't always have to be, like you said, a thought leader in order to be an entrepreneur, in order to be an effective business owner. There's plenty of opportunity in all other ways to be successful. So I hope that it just gives people a breath of fresh air, that if they can't come up with a thought, well, then I better stick with my day job. And there's just such a difference there. So I know you said you were like thought leader of thought leaders. And, do you see a lot of revelation? Do you learn a lot on your podcast when you have guests? Is that pretty normal for you?
Yeah, I learn from pretty much every conversation. There's commonalities, but everyone has a unique story. Kind of started with it like a great friend and mentor of mine. The one sentence version is he was in an accident and he had his arm cut off.
Oh,
And he sewed back on. Very unique story, jaw dropper, amazing human being. My story's not that sexy, and not that that's sexy, but not that's like
yeah,
doesn't jump off the page. But we all have a story that needs to be shared. It could be
sure.
your son, it could be your cousin, it could be the niece, it could be the church, it could be a town board. We all have a unique story that we need to share.
Yeah.
And every time I have a conversation on the podcast, on your podcast, some dude on the street I just met, I learned something new.
Sure. Well, and I think as we start to land the plane today, I think that's another great piece is you have a unique story. As if you're listening right now, you have a unique story. It may not be as traumatic as Ben's, 2020 close to rock bottom, or Ben's mentor where, he lost an arm. I know I struggle with that as a speaker. I'm like, hey, nothing really weird happened to me. I can't say that I was the first one to ever get bitten by this particular snake in the Congo or whatever, and I survived. I don't have that. I just
Yeah.
have the general, I show up, I do my best, I serve others, blah, blah, blah. And people still come up to me after and are like, man, I'm so inspired by what you said. And I'm just like, I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
There wasn't like this big, massive story, like you said. So I think it's encouraging that we have our unique story. And I think it's just hard sometimes to find what that is, because we just live it and it doesn't seem unique. It just seems kind of boring almost. So I appreciate that you're sharing that. So one last question, I'm gonna let you go. What would your tip of the day be, Ben, for somebody listening? Maybe it's something we covered already. Maybe it's something burning on your heart that hasn't got out yet. But what would your tip of the day be today?
I want to jump off on where you just left off because a lot of people don't know their story yet. So my tip would just be to go to Google, type in the words long list of values. Brene Brown is a great PDF printable list. You could do long list of values, Brene Brown. Go through, circle every one that jumps out at you. Then you have your first batch, but we can't value everything at 100%. What are our top values? And then we can look at two stories. These stories can be in our why statements, they can be in our social media posts, they can be in our speeches. They're the core of who we are. Two kinds of stories: mentor stories and antagonist or villain stories. A mentor that taught you the value and it's now a value of yours and you embody
Hmm.
it because of someone else in your life, or an
Sure,
antagonist that taught you what life feels like when you don't have that value. So you become a advocate for that value because you had a chip on your shoulder because it was something that wasn't present in your life at a young age. So if
sure.
we understand what we value and who the mentors are that taught us that, and then who the people that created that chip on our shoulder that taught us that, we'll never run out of stories. And it'll be easier to be a thought leader, to be a communicator, because when I show up and say, I believe growth is a value of mine, here's why. I've already
Yeah.
thought it through. So that's a fun exercise. Anyone can go. You can spend 5 minutes on it or 5 days on it, but find three core values and start developing those stories around those values. And it'll really kind of put some fire under you to start telling people about them.
That's awesome. Okay, I lied. I got one more question
All
because
right,
of
let's do it.
what you just said. Um, so a lot of times when people are looking at a list of words like that, they kind of like they more project what they want to be, what they want themselves to be, what values they wish they had. Like when you do that, or when somebody does that, do you encourage them to like have a mentor, have a trusted person to kind of help them with that? So that, because I'm guessing there's a lot of blind spots because I want to say I'm this, but someone else would be like, dude, you are not that at all, you know?
Yeah.
So do you suggest that someone kind of help them with that if they get stuck?
Yeah, whether it's doing a 360 or sending it to five friends. One of my values I put in as fun because I love having fun. My whole life was me just partying and going to music. I love fun.
Yeah.
And my friend called me out on it because he's like, a lot of what you do is not fun. And he helped me work to the real word was fulfillment
Okay.
because some decisions aren't fun, but they're fulfilling.
Sure.
So he helped me work that out. I used to think that I liked growth. A mentor of mine helped me start to realize that it's more wisdom.
Mm,
Growth is hard to track, but
yeah.
wisdom's a lifelong journey regardless. And they're tiny little tweaks. I don't have it all perfectly figured out, but what you
Sure.
just said is correct. Send it to five friends.
Yeah.
Send it to a family member, a friend, a colleague, a client, and some stranger you met last week.
Yeah.
And between all of those answers, you'll get a lot of good
Sure.
feedback. But at the
Wow.
end of the day, it's your brand, it's your values. And if you
Sure.
look at specifically ages like 9 to 13, a lot of our value system is psychologically determined at that time. So if
Mm,
you look at the mentors or the antagonists in your life around 9 to 13, it generally becomes pretty clear. Um,
wow.
and we can change the words, but you know this through
Sure.
disc, like we can change the words, but the core of who we are doesn't change that much.
Yep, absolutely. Wow, that's so cool. Hey, I could do this all day, but I
Me
want
too.
to let you get back to doing what you do so well. Um, if somebody listening, Ben, wants to learn more about you, wants to understand more about B. Albert Marketing or the Real Business Connections podcast or your Grow Getters Only group, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, let's make it simple. I'm going to do a three-parter, but it's simple. I
Okay.
wouldn't be here without Dave today. So if you haven't already hit subscribe to wherever you're listening, a like if it's possible, a thumbs up, a 5 stars, leave a comment, a review. I'm going to ramble on purpose to give them time. Show some love for Dave here now because you can find my podcast, Real Business Connections, wherever you found this, or just Google it. So,
Sure.
like this, show some love for Dave because I wouldn't be here without him. I don't know if they're subscribed or not yet, but they should be. Subscribe here, look up Real Business Connections. And if you want to be surrounded by other entrepreneurs, specifically entrepreneurship, marketing, and sales, that's where Grow Getters Only kind of enters in. There is a mastermind, but there is a free peer to peer community. And you just type in the words weallgrowtogether.com, weallgrowtogether.com, and then you'll
Perfect.
join a peer-to-peer community of other entrepreneurs and all that. But this all starts with showing love for your host, and I appreciate you having me, Dave. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Honored to hang out with you. Again, Grow Getters Only is a great group of people. Again, I think in safety, there's numbers. And so often we as entrepreneurs, we want to do it on our own, which I'm all for. I just know that sometimes, somebody's already gone through it. Why in the world would you want to go through of something that somebody's already gone through? It's so much easier to ask the question of, hey, how did you do this rather than, get stuck in the weeds on those things. So again, that's me. I just want to get to the end in those things. If you like the weeds, then hey, no more power to you. But it's always good to have somebody come alongside you. So and then same with the realbusinessconnections.com is the spot for checking out the podcast.
Podcast, a little bit of marketing, things like that. You can actually go there and you'll find links to all of it. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for hanging out. Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I'm glad that COVID ended for you better than it started. And I'm glad that you learned through it rather than, became bitter. You became better, like you said. So I love hearing stories like that end well. We all love Leave It to Beaver. For those of you that don't know, that's an old show that, you know what, every show the kids end up, everything always ended up in a good spot. So thank you so much for sharing this, and I can't wait to keep learning from you. And again, go to long list of values, Google that as your tip of the day. And again, if you run into some issues, check in with Ben Albert and he'll be happy to help. So thanks again, Ben, for everything you're doing.
Thanks for having me.